Alrighty, hi guys. So today we're going to be working on hip mobility. This is going to be a yoga for athletes video. So if you're new to yoga for athletes, this is the first time. So it's yoga inspired mobility work. So it's not just passive stretches, oftentimes it's hard. So this one is often super requested, so total hip mobility. So let's get into it right away. So some of you have probably done this with me before. You're going to sit onto your butt, and then those hips are going to come out in front of you. I want those heels to be wider than the edges of your hips. You're giving yourself a nice wide stance. So let's perch right on those butt bones or your sit bones. You're going to reach those fingertips straight out in front of you, so we're not going to cheat by slouching through our low back. Having those arms out in front of you is going to force you to keep engaging through the core, yeah? All right, we're going to start with my favorite, hip windshield wipers. So we're going to let those knees fall over towards the right. I want you to mostly try and stay up onto those butt bones. It's okay if that left one lifts a little. So just letting those knees fall down towards the side as much as you can. Let's take a big breath in here. Big breath out. And come up through center. And take it over towards the left. Now for a lot of you, especially if you're an athlete who played a single direction sport, if you have a dominant leg, if you're used to shooting, swinging, cutting one way more than the other, you're going to have more hip mobility one way than the other. That's okay, that's normal. But we're going to work on trying to equalize that as much as we can. Let's go one more each way. So stay up on those sit bones, no cheating from that low back, and take your hips right. Good, come through center, and take those hips over towards the left. That's it. All right, this time from the left, we're gonna let those hips rotate all the way down so you can let that left butt bone sit off the floor. So we're gonna come into what's called a 90-90 position. I'm just gonna readjust myself onto the mat. So essentially, I want your left knee at 90 degrees, and then this right leg is gonna be at 90 degrees. So your back leg is straight out from your hip, and then that shin is making that 90-degree angle. So here right away, I want you to see if you're able to de-weight those hands as we were last time. If you can't, if you're forced over towards this left side, you probably really need to work on what's called internal rotation or this hip mobility on the right. So let's get into it. So if you can't get up and over, that's okay. We're gonna start with our clock series, coming forward over top of this left leg. Now I want you, even as you come forward, to still keep trying to ground down through your butt as you take those fingers forward. So here in this first part of our clock series, you're going to feel this through kind of that glute area. This is a really nice modification for those of you in yoga who find that pigeon pose causes too much compression in your knee or your ankle. This allows you to work that same movement as pigeon, hip external rotation, but without loading or compressing as much through the knee. So this is a nice option for a lot of us. Good, from here you're going to start to walk those fingers a little bit more towards the right. So you're going to change your angle of how your low back pulls on your hip. So that might make the stretch a little bit more intense down lower into the glutes. And take a couple breaths here. And then we're going to keep going. We're going to take those fingertips down towards the right. So for those of you that can sit up nice and tall, I want you to think about pressing down more through the inner line of the thigh, trying to get that right butt bone down towards the floor. For those of you that are having to lean over towards the left, I want you to try and, as much as you can, lean your upper body towards this right side to try and encourage more weight down through that right hip. And so here in this kind of series, what we're working on mobility through the ball and socket joints. So that's how the ball of your hip joints, your thigh bone, works into the socket of your hip. So we're working on that by making sure we have full hip rotation. We're making sure we're taking full advantage out of every single dimension of movement of how that ball can rotate in that socket. We're also strengthening or lengthening through the inner thighs, through some of the glute muscles as well. So this is a nice position to take advantage of interarticular health as well as muscle tissue health. We're going to keep going. We're going to start to walk those fingertips back behind us. So depending where your tightest here, you might feel this through the quad. You might feel this more through the inner thigh or some of those short adductor muscles. Good, so lifting up through the chest. If you're someone who wants to make this more quad, you can reach for this back ankle and pull the heel in towards the butt a little bit more. If that causes you compression in the knee, no worries, you release that back out. All right, we're gonna come back up through center, and we're gonna windshield wiper our way over to the other side. So I want you to try and do this with those hands reaching forward, coming all the way back up through center, use that hip strength. Of course, if you need to use your hands to get up here, you can. And then let's rotate this all the way through the other way, so creating that 90-90 position on the other side. Good, so first things first, we're gonna try and equalize that pressure down through both of our hips. A lot of us are gonna be slumped over towards the right, but we'll work through our mobility and then see if it gets a little bit easier. So let's start by coming forward. So take those fingertips forward over top of that front shin. You're gonna feel that outer hip start to open up. So this should feel into those glute muscles, those muscles that work to push you off to create hip extension, hip abduction. You should feel those opening up here. Again, awesome option if pigeon pose, that traditional yoga pose, doesn't feel so great for you. Let's keep going. We're gonna take those fingers kind of over top of that front foot, just feeling that hip stretch travel down a little bit lower. And then we're gonna keep going, trying to take those fingertips down towards the left. Again, if you can sit up tall, you're just encouraging more of your weight down through that left thigh bone. If you're someone that's really slumped over towards the right, see if you can shift your weight towards the left. And okay if you need to use a little side bend of your upper body to help create a little bit more force and gravity to push down on that left hip. Okay, and then keeping going, we're going to take those hands back behind us. Feeling that stretch, that opening happening through the front of the left thigh. You can play with that quad stretch, pulling the heel in towards the butt, or just feel this where you're tightest. So it might be quad, might be hip flexor or psoas, or through the inner thigh. And then let's slowly come back up through center. And I want you to see if maybe just after spending a little bit of time in this position, if it's a little bit easier to be upright. Let's go hands out in front. You're gonna try and use just the core, just the hip strength to come back through center. We'll go one more windshield wiper each way. Now for some of us, it's already gonna feel easier just after that 5 minutes of work to get those hips down side to side. All right, from here, we're gonna come into our next pose, our next shape. So I want you to cross your ankles. You're gonna make your way over to hands and knees. Probably staying sideways on the mat as you just were. From here, I always like to fold my mat in half, just to give myself a little bit more space and a little bit more cushion underneath the knee. So we're gonna start with that right knee down underneath that right hip. You're gonna lengthen that left leg out as long as you can. So you're coming into an inner thigh stretch on the left. So oftentimes these inner thigh muscles get left behind in hip mobility, but those inner thigh muscles, they attach all the way up to your hip bones. So oftentimes those of us that have really tight hips, we can also have issues happening through the inner thighs that make it harder for us to access stretches in the outer thighs or the outer glutes. So let's start by adding this little rock forward and back. So pushing down through the palms, you're gonna take this forward, shifting the hips forward, and then think about taking your butt back towards your heel. As you shift forward to back, you're gonna feel this stretch change through the inner thigh. Good, and then coming through center, I want to show you how your abdominals connect to your inner thigh through fascial connections, through tissue connections. So let's test it out. You're going to press down through your left palm, and then I want you twisting your right fingertips up towards the ceiling. As you rotate your rib cage away from that inner thigh, notice if that inner thigh stretch just got more intense. So this is something that I want you to be aware of, especially my athletes who are doing a lot of core work. Oftentimes through connections, our inner thighs engage a lot when we're doing core work, especially when it's too hard. This can be good, this is useful when you're on the field, when you're competing, when you're playing your sport. You have more tissue to generate power from. But I also want you to note how sometimes when we're stretching our hips, we need to change the position of our low back or our core to be able to fully stretch or activate through the muscle. So take one more breath here. Gorgeous, let's take those fingertips down. So we're gonna start to walk our way towards that big toe. So you're gonna start to pivot on that left heel, kickstanding your way around onto that right knee. So we found our way into our hamstring stretch, our half split. So from here, I want you pulling your hips, your tailbone back towards that back heel, flexing those toes back towards you. Let's get that bonus calf stretch. Good, so we're gonna come forward. You're gonna take 10 seconds and more of this passive hamstring stretch. And I know what you're thinking. You might be thinking, well, hamstrings aren't one of my hip muscles. But again, the hamstring itself is gonna be attaching to the bottom of your hip bone, your ischium. So as well as hamstring tightness can contribute to some hip dysfunction. Or overall hamstring health, the healthier your hamstrings are, the more open your hamstrings are, the healthier and happier your hips are gonna be too. Let's start to walk those fingers up. Now for a lot of us, this is super wobbly, even for me, and I do this all the time. And so no worries, if you have a wall or something to hold on to, you can go ahead and do that. So for most of us, we're actually not gonna get lift off, but now what I want you to do is I want you to squeeze your quad muscle like crazy, and I want you to imagine you're gonna lift that left leg off the floor. Good, so your core is on, you're squeezing that quad. I want you to lift that foot off the floor. Go, 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 squeeze as much as you can. Don't F it yourself, try and actually do it. Can you lift that heel? Go for 4. Lift up for 3, 2, 1. Come forward over top of that hamstring, soft bend through the knee. Do you have a little bit more space after just activating through the opposite muscle? Good, a couple breaths here. And then starting to walk it up, we'll do one more. So start to lengthen, think about squeezing your quad, think about pulling those toes back, and then think about lifting your whole leg up towards the ceiling. So engage the hip flexor, engage the quad, engage the hamstring, everything tight. Think about lifting, lifting, lifting. I know it's not gonna go anywhere, but think about lifting for 3, 2, 1, come forward. Let that go. You're gonna bring that left knee beside the right. We're gonna switch this out. So keep that left knee down underneath you. Lengthen that right leg long away from you. Those hands are gonna come forward. We're gonna gently come into our adductor work, so our inner thigh work. Coming forward and back, forward and back. Now friends, we're going to work on adding that twist. So we're going to use creating tension through our abdominals, pulling the abdominal muscles away, through those tissue connections, through that fascial connection, through that sling. You're going to create that deeper stretch through the inner thigh. So pay attention to how this stretch feels. Plant your right palm down. Start to rotate those left fingertips away. For most of us, we're right away going to feel a deeper stretch through the adductor. So especially those that do a lot of sports with a lot of sideways movements, a lot of cutting, or if your sport requires a lot of core strength, twisting, then I really want you adding in lots of rotation to your inner thigh stretches, just to make sure you're getting lots of flexibility through the whole sling, through the whole system. That's it, one more breath. And then rotating down, bringing that left hand down, you're gonna start to rotate, face the back edge of your mat. So flex those toes back towards you, use your hands to help you. And then come into this hamstring stretch over top of the right, so just let your body hang out over top. That knee might still be super bent for you, that's okay, hamstrings are a tight one. Alright, and let's walk those fingertips up, come up nice and tall. So for some of you, this might already be a good enough stability exercise, enough activation, just trying to keep your balance here. For the rest of us, I want you to think about tightening the top of your thigh, your quad. So squeeze, try and straighten the knee more. And then here, this is my stronger leg. I want you to think that you can lift your big toe up off the floor, keep your core tight. So try and lift. We're gonna go for 4. Squeeze, 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 try and lift. Can you get any air time for 2? For 1, let your chest come forward. Do you have a little bit more space now in your hamstring? One of my top tips is adding strength, adding muscular control into your stretching is gonna get you further. Because our body, our neural pathways, the way our nervous system works, is it doesn't want to give us any more flexibility unless it feels like it can control it, it can use it. It's smart, right? And so if we integrate strength training with our flexibility training, you're gonna have way longer lasting results and quicker results. So one more time with me, come all the way up. core is tight, rock solid core. Squeeze of the quad, try and lift that foot. Lift and hold, maybe squeeze your fist to help. Go 5. Squeeze the quad, go 4. Yes, 3. You'll get there, I promise. It's 2. It's 1, that heel comes down. Start to hinge forward one more time into that stretch. All right, coming back forward through center. We're gonna go one more time, inner thighs. And this time we're gonna get into those short adductor muscles. So those feet are gonna come down, those hips are gonna come out nice and long. So you're probably like, Haley, we just stretched our inner thighs. But we have inner thighs that are more stretched when our knees are bent, and inner thigh muscles that are more stretched when our legs are long. So I always like to incorporate both. Again, I know I've talked about this a lot, but my players that play soccer and football, these adductor stretches are so important. There's a lot of research that shows it has an impact on injury prevention, making sure your inner thighs are both strong and flexible. So keeping that in mind, let's add in just a little bit of strength training. Again, some of you have probably done this with me before. You're gonna lift up that right foot. Good, you're gonna lift up the left foot. As much as you can, I want you to keep your hip bones in front of your pelvis facing down towards the floor. And now if you're like, oh my God, I can't get my foot off the floor, that's okay. But again, just a clue, something you need to work on to bulletproof your body, to get your body really strong, really injury prevented. Good, let's take 3 more lifts each side. If you're not lifting, you're thinking about it. You're still squeezing your butt. If you're feeling cramping, that's totally normal. That's your body learning a new way to move. And just back off a little. All right, you're gonna start to drop those hips a little bit forward to come out of it. And then nice and slow, walk those knees in together. All right, almost there, guys. We're gonna go into the hip flexors. We're gonna go into the glutes, and then we're gonna be done. So from your kneeling position, I want you to bring that right foot forward. So a lot of us, when we do hip flexor stretches, we really dump through the low spine. I already know you can bend your low back, that's not what I'm worried about. So come out of it. If you had a tail, I want you to imagine that you just tucked your tail between your legs. Yeah, so rack that tailbone under, think about lengthening your butt bone down towards the floor. So for a lot of us, you're feeling that front of the thigh, you're feeling that psoas muscle already. And now a way to get deeper into your actual hip flexor, so the hip flexor, that short part higher up, not your quad, lower down, is by pulling up on your abdominals and crunching forward. Because the hip flexor connects to our abdominals, a lot like how our obliques connect to our inner thigh. So tuck your tailbone under, keep it tucked, maybe a hand on the low back to keep it there. Now I want you to think about pulling your abdominals up and in, like you're zipping up pants that are a little bit too tight. And then you're gonna crunch your shoulders forward. So think abdominal crunch, and then keep lengthening the tailbone down. This is a true psoas, a true hip flexor stretch. Or just, guys, take a breath in. And take a breath out. One more, inhale, don't lose that tuck, don't lose that crunch. Exhale. And then coming forward, keep your spine neutral, so don't arch through the back. As you come more forward, you might feel that stretch go lower down. That's gonna be your quadricep stretch. Okay, almost there. Walk that right foot out wide, bring your fingertips down. Good, and then you're just gonna spring your left foot out wide. We're gonna drop down through those hips. And push your elbows into the outside of your knees, press those knees wide. So full hip mobility. If this is too much, you come up a little bit on those hips. And 2 breaths here. Opening it up, letting it go. Good, and then slowly we're gonna switch legs. So start to straighten out those legs a little bit and get that left foot to face forward. Your right knee's gonna come down underneath your right hip. We go hip flexor on the right. So we're gonna start to tuck your tailbone under. Good, so tuck, tuck, tuck it under like you're afraid and you're tucking your tail between your legs. Good, then from here, push your whole hip girdle a little bit more forward so you feel the stretch come higher up. To finally add more tension, I want you to think about you're zipping up that pair of pants, so you know you're gonna pull your abs in, you're gonna pull your belly in. Yeah, right away you might have felt that psoas muscle more. And then finally you're gonna add that crunch forward of the shoulders. So you should feel it right here. It won't be as much down here, it'll be more higher. That's your true psoas. It comes up into the abdominals, so that's why we engage them, we lift them to stretch the muscle from both ends. And good, and then coming up out of this, so come up out of that crunch. Just let the hips come forward. You might feel that travel down lower. That's your quadricep stretch. All right, so finishing, you're gonna come back to kneeling. You're gonna sit down onto your butt. We already did a little bit of glute stretching. We're just gonna finish it off. So let's take this left foot. You're gonna cross it over top of your right leg. So the left foot's the outside of the right thigh, and then sit up tall, hug your knee into your chest. So bringing the knee across the midline, across the body, is a really nice way to stretch out some of those gluteal muscles. A really nice way to stretch out one of those sneaky muscles that gets really tight in the back of the hip called your piriformis. If this isn't really doing it for you, if this isn't enough, you can come out of what we call hip flexion by letting that left knee fall down towards the right. And then similar to what we did in our abdominals, I want you pulling up in your low spine. And then you can start to hinge forward over top of that knee. You should feel that quite deeply, quite intensely in that left glute. All of these we're moving through pretty quickly just to get through the whole hip. Of course, you can pick and choose parts of these to do longer than others or to add into your daily routine. I encourage that. Let's switch. So straighten left leg and cross your right ankle across. Up nice and tall through the spine, hug your knee in towards your chest. So for me, this is such a big stretch through my glutes. So this is usually where I choose to stay. So no, it's maybe not the deepest variation, but based on the angle of my muscle fibers, this is where I feel it the deepest. So you do that same exploration for you. And from here, you can maybe check out letting that knee fall away a little bit more. So you add in a little bit more of that element of hip rotation, but keep engaging through that hip adduction, so pulling that knee in towards the midline. And then final option to pull up and out of your low back to tension the glutes from the top, and then support your chest forward. Slowly sitting back up. We're gonna swing those legs back out in front, and then let's windshield wiper one more time. So maybe after just 20 minutes of hip mobility, you already have more space. How cool is that? Maybe you don't, not so much. But also keep in mind that when it comes to hip mobility, lower body flexibility, that even a centimeter more movement is a change. It's a measurable change and it matters. I encourage you to keep up with this every day, to add in little pieces of hip mobility throughout your routine. Not only to feel better, but to move better and to, as always, importantly, prevent and rehab injuries. Thanks you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. This is our Yoga for Athletes 20-minute quick hip mobility, and I will see you in the next video.